Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host, Janice Gillum-Grady. How you doing today, Janice?
I'm good, Mark. Good day, everybody, and welcome back to another fun show. We got some exciting things to discuss in this one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something a monumental event in Scientology history in terms of the management of Scientology that took place in 1982. And we're going to talk about it, and we've got some photographs to show the people involved, but we also have somebody who was involved as well. She was the spouse of one of the people that was in trouble. And anyway, why don't you go ahead and bring her on, Janice?
Well, before we bring her on, I just want to say I won't have a lot to say throughout this because I was busy chasing gophers on the golf course because I was so disaffected. But I watched from afar this whole thing go on. So I'll come in and comment every now and again, but
you'll add your 2 cents. Right. You'll add your 2 cents.
Yeah, I'll have my 2 cents. Yeah. Okay, so let's bring on Sandy Holman.
Hi, Sandy. How you doing?
Good.
That's good to see you again.
Yeah. Good to be here.
Yeah. I've been enjoying the chats with you.
Good. Me too.
Yeah. Now, Sandy is Sandy Holman. That's her maiden name. But at the time, she was married to a gentleman named Roger Barnes, who was a Sea Org executive. And so she was Sandy Barnes at that time. And so we're going to go over this, what happened here. We're going to talk, first of all, we're going to do a setup on this. This is what we're going to be talking about is this issue here that I've got right here, and I'll show you much more closely. But it was the Religious Technology Center Conditions Order Number 1, dated the 9th of October, 1982. And it was a committee of evidence, which was a justice action that Scientology, per the policy, they have, committee of evidence is kind of like a jury trial to basically investigate people and determine if they've committed high crimes or crimes against Scientology and what should happen to them. And this was a big committee of evidence. We're going to go into the details on that in 1982, but we want to set up what was going on before that. Okay, and I'll start first before we get into the mission holder part of it, Janice. I just want to mention in 1981 and 82, when this was going on, L. Ron Hubbard was in hiding at the time, right? And we did not know where he was.
Yes, that's correct. And that's when he was writing Mission Earth and Battlefield Earth and Way to Happiness.
That's right. And he was off, basically. We had no communication line. The only communication line, he was with Annie Broker and her husband, Pat Broker. And the only communication line was if Pat Broker did a courier run and met up in the middle of the night in order to exchange, messages and things like that. So that way Hubbard was quote unquote kept safe, So, but during that time period, Hubbard was gone for months. I mean, literally, you guys didn't hear from. It wasn't like a weekly basis or anything like that, right, Janice? From
right.
What I recall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was big gaps of not hearing from him.
Right. And so Scientology at that time was actually expanding very rapidly. There were organizations that were being opened all across the world. New continents were being opened up. Italy became a major continent that was starting to open up. There were lots of new organizations opening up all over the place. Europe was booming. There were lots of new organizations opening up under the commanding officer of Europe was Guillaume Lasarve at the time. And they were opening up Scientology missions and Scientology organizations all over the place. LATAM, which was Mexico and Central America, that was taking off. So there was a lot of expansion going on, and the Scientology statistics were actually doing very well. The gross income and the delivery, all those was doing really, really well.
Yep.
And that was happening under the management of what was called the International Management Order at the time, and that was headed up by a man by the name of Kerry Gleason. Yes, Sandy.
Now, I was gonna say that I hope people are noticing that LRH was off the lines during all of this expansion going on, and right. And not only Kerry Gleason, but the Watchdog Committee, Dee Dee Riesdorf and Gail Riesdorf, and there was a third person, I think, with them. Or there, yeah,
Crystal.
they were.
Annie Taskett. Annie Taskett.
Yep. And
Yeah.
was the Watchdog Committee member for the Mission Network.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
And
but
then,
I would go ahead.
well, anyway, I just wanted to point that out. You know, he was also sick during this time. He
Hubbard
was ill.
was sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Hubbard was
But
sick.
anyway, let's finish up what I was saying was that also the Flag Service Corps in Clearwater was booming. It was making $1 million, $2 million a week in gross income and delivering tons and tons of what they call NOTs, or net new aerodynamics for OTs at the time, and was seeing a boom. It was bigger than it had ever been. I mean, they were buying buildings. They didn't have enough hotel rooms. I remember because I was there to service all the people that were flooding to Clearwater in order to go up the bridge at the time. So I'm just painting the picture of what was going on. Scientology was really, really rocking and rolling. At the same time, people like, well, no, not yet. I don't think Jeff Hawkins was doing a Book One campaign just yet, was he? In 1981, 82?
Yeah, I think he was just starting around that time.
Yeah. So I'm not saying this. Let me finish. I just want to finish painting the picture. We're not trying to. I'm just telling you the way it was, viewers out there. You know, whether or not you agree with Scientology or whatever, it was in its boom period. This is when it was really expanding under the people that we've mentioned. So anyway, what do you want to say, Janice? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say, when you said they were buying up buildings because they were busting at the seams and needed places to put people. They didn't need buildings to sit there empty like they do now. And I just wanted to bring that up.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, so that was what was going on at the time. And meanwhile, Hubbard was off doing his thing and all that. And then there was a little thing. The Guardian's office was also being disbanded at the time. Commodore's Messenger organization under David Miscavige. He was the action chief and CMO. And they basically sent in missionaries, senior executives, Sea Org executives in to remove the hierarchy of the Guardian's office, Mary Sue Hubbard, Jane Kember, people like that, and reorganize it as what's now the Office of Special Affairs, which basically continued the same thing, but without the criminals that were there that were, infiltrating the U.S. government. Anyway, so that was going on too. So Hubbard was just getting reports about, this was going on, and he was very paranoid when he actually did come and heard what was going on. He was very paranoid. He was very sick, like you said, Sandy, and he started writing all the time about something called external influences, and I'll go into that and when I look at the committee of evidence here in just a minute. But basically, he was convinced that there were people infiltrating the organization and were trying to disrupt it. There were plants. There was external people outside trying to influence it. Anyway, so the mission holder situation happened. So Sandy, go ahead. What were you and Roger doing at the time?
Right. Roger and I were running Scientology Missions International. Roger was the executive director. I was the chief financial officer. And we were sent on a command mission to the UK, where we set up shop in the stables at St. Hill. And the mission network was doing tremendously well under Roger. The statistics were in power we went there in December of 1980. And so the committee of evidence that we're about to discuss was in October of 82. So for the almost 2 years, the stats were going up. And one of the things that was going on in the mission network that probably was a cause of the committee of evidence, and certainly was instrumental in the trouble that Roger got into, and consequently that I got into, was that there were certain mission holders, chief among them Kingsley Wimbush, who had started this thing based on pushing power to power, which was a very key policy in Scientology.
Simon Boulevard.
The Simon Boulevard policy. Yes,
Right.
Janice.
Now, Kingsley Wimbush had a big mission in Walnut
Stevens
Creek, right?
Stevens
Creek.
Right, which was the Santa Clara mission. Stevens Creek was the name of the street it was on.
Right.
It was the Santa Clara mission where I got in and my brother got in and we named all the people before, you know, Spanky got in and Julie Gillespie, who became Julie Mayo, also got in that.
Wow.
Because when I did an observation mission after the whole network was wiped out, I went to what was called Stevens Creek.
Right.
And that was what they were calling the mission. So they must have switched the name from Santa Clara to Stevens Creek.
Well, yeah, I don't know what the name was, but it was, I don't remember what the name was, but it was
located in Santa Clara.
Yeah. It was located in Santa Clara on Stevens Creek Boulevard.
Right.
Okay.
So this Simon Boulevard policy, which was fundamental to how Scientology was supposed to work, was that if you were working for someone who was in power, you were supposed to push energy, positive energy, in their direction. So the way this was accomplished in, at least in the Stevens Creek mission, was Kingsley Wimbush had staff members washing his car and doing his laundry and doing whatever they could to push positive reinforcement in his direction so that he could focus on bringing his statistics up, which he was doing. Well,
it sounds completely the same thing that happened in this Commodore's Messenger organization, where they had a environmental, like an EPF that did the laundry for the messengers and for the senior executives. They just did not just in the CMO. They had it in, there was nothing wrong with that, really.
No, not at all.
But well, you know what? If someone had mentioned it to me, I would have said, well, back in the 70s, Ray and Pam Kemp, who had the Orange County mission in Tustin, they got in trouble and were pulled to the ship and put through liability for having mission staff handling their personal affairs.
Well, yes, that wasn't known by Roger or me at the time. The history, of course, no one ever talks. So,
Right.
Right.
So anyway, so we were, Roger was a little bit skeptical at first, I remember. And I also remember they were doing something else called de-dinging.
De-dinging. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember what it was exactly, but I remember that Roger was particularly skeptical about that. Do you remember what it was, Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was talking to Janice before you came on. I remember the de-dinging. It was kind of like making a joke of the fact of like getting rid of false ideas or fixed ideas that somebody had. We're going to de-ding you, just like if you labeled it something else. But then that was made to think, oh, this is this new squirrel technology that they're doing, and they're off source and they're not following Hubbard because they're doing this de-dinging.
Well, because they had a different word for it.
Right.
Well, this is and this is just before the false data stripping came out. So de-dinging was like false data stripping. And that obviously gave Hubbard that idea on false data stripping, but it had a better title than de-dinging.
Yeah. So Roger was, very careful with all of this because the statistics were in power, and he didn't want to squash anything that was making that happen. But he was kind of walking on eggshells with this whole thing. And then we started kind of implementing it internationally at SMI-INT. Sorry, I got a tickle. And the way we were doing that was...
By the way, here's Roger on the right and Sandy right there sitting down. Just going to throw this photograph up there.
At a party.
Yeah.
And Roger was a long-term Sea Org executive, right? It basically dealing with public and getting people into Scientology, right?
Mm-hmm. He was a top registrar.
Yeah.
Registrar. But he was also an exec. after being
Right.
a top registrar.
Right.
And he did a lot of world tours where he went around and regged money from people all over the world. So he had met so many of these international players on all these world tours that he had done. And so he was very highly regarded internationally. There was nowhere that I went internationally that didn't know Roger Barnes. Everyone I met knew him or knew of him.
Right.
So so he was running the Mission Network. He was doing the best he could to keep it on source and on track, but not to destabilize it because the statistics were doing so well. So we were going along doing that, and the Mission Holder Conference happened. This is before that Committee of Evidence.
Right.
I was not at the Mission Holder meeting, but that was when the finance police came in.
No, that was later.
No, that was later.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is
Wendell was definitely there.
Well, the first Mission Holder Conference was in Clearwater, right?
Yes,
This
and
is not
we
the one in
were.
San Francisco. This is not the one in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. I was talking about the one in
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah. So we were in the UK, but then we got transferred back to LA, and we were living across the street from the Blue Building in this condemned building that was considered really, wonderful Sea Org berthing because each room had its own little kitchenette and bathroom, but the building was condemned. It was infested with roaches and it was disgusting. But anyway, so yes.
You were used to roaches from the ship.
Absolutely. But this place was also dirty. At least on the ship, we kept our berthing clean. This place had old carpets that were like 50 years old that, had never been cleaned. I mean, it was, it was falling apart.
I'd never gone inside it.
Yeah. Okay. So, so anyway, let's see. So the Mission Holder.
Can I fill in here a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So the Clearwater, they had a Mission Holder Conference in Clearwater, Florida. Okay. And I think it was 1981 sometime. And basically all the big mission holders were there. And when I say big, we're talking a guy named Martin Samuels. He probably had 7 or 8 missions all over California and Portland. And he had the Delphi School. I mean, he's just really big. Dean Stokes from Texas, Kingsley Wimbush from Stevens Creek, just to name a few, probably
Alan Walters, Kyle Barney.
Alan Walters, probably Bent Corridon for the Riverside mission, I mean, all these big.
Yeah, Howie Rower.
Yeah, and these missions were a major feeder line for Scientology. That's how it was. People how Scientology expanded. People could buy a franchise. Let me explain quickly.
Yeah, go on.
People could buy a franchise, like buy a mission, like a territory. Like I'm going to buy, Jonesboro or whatever, and literally have that, and then they could start their own mission and basically deliver auditing, and also they could deliver the communications course, the Hubbard Qualified Scientologist course, and they could deliver auditor training for Dianetics. They could do the Hubbard Standard Dianetics course. That was it. And then at that point, they were supposed to send that public person to the nearest organization to do their next steps on the bridge. And so that was the whole step. It was mission, then organization, then American St. Hill organization, then advanced organization. And it was like Hubbard worked this all out. And so these mission holders were major feeder lines. And then if you owned a mission.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're going to have to edit me out. I got a wine delivery.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, we'll carry on while you do that. Anyway, but if you were a mission holder, you paid a certain percentage of your income
10%
to the mother church, Scientology mother church, guardian's office, whoever it was, right? But then you paid your own bills, you paid your staff, you paid everybody, and then you made a profit. You got to keep that yourself, right? So it was an actual business. And so a lot of these mission holders became very successful and very wealthy. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. So go ahead,
Yeah, well, what I wanted to bring up is I grew up in a mission. My parents were mission holders. They started from nothing, and they ran their own mission, and they fed to the local organization. Now, over all the years I worked with Hubbard and Mary Sue, his attitude towards the mission holders was, let them just do their thing. It's a business for them. They will make money. If they go out ethics, then you just pull them in and clean them up and send them back out. But these guys they're Div 6 people. They will just go out and do their thing and bring people in and feed them to the org. And the orgs were responsible to help, feed them, not feed them, but help build them
oversee
up.
them and help them
oversee them.
Yeah.
And any qualification type activity, that was the org's job to pull in their auditors and get them crammed or whatever and inspect for any tech. And so this was the job of the orgs, and it was a very loose management of the mission holders because it was their business. And if someone died, if someone died, they would have an executive that was under them take over and become the new mission holder, and it just kind of worked, and it just kept expanding, and you paid your 10% to worldwide, and that was what the Guardian's office actually operated off of.
Right. And then they this mission holder are you back, Sandy? Now I'm going to bring you in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to thank Janice for bringing that up, because that was part of, that's why Roger wasn't like on top of these guys, because, that was how you were supposed to manage them. So
you let them run their show.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, and a mission could be someone's living room with one student or one PC. It didn't have to be this big course room or this big going concern. It was just a feeder unit to the org.
Right. And then some missions then would grow to the size where they would become an organization. They would graduate and become what they called a Class 4 organization. But then a lot of mission holders, they didn't want it because it was their business. They wanted to have a network of missions and continue to just send people to flag and send people up the bridge. They didn't want to become organizations, which is totally within their rights if they didn't want to do that. But anyway, so that's
they were franchises. They were franchises. And the only reason their name was changed to Mission was because that sounded more ecclesiastical. But the fact was they were like McDonald's,
Right.
They were franchises.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, when we had it in our house, it was a franchise.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's what a mission is for our viewers, right? So there was a conference of all these big mission holders in Clearwater, right? Well, they were upset because I don't know what they were upset of, but one of the things I remember they were upset with at the time was that they didn't like the direction of management or what was happening. I don't know if it had something to do with, people messing with their missions or what. Sandy, you might know better than I do. But one of the things they were upset with is, who is this watchdog committee? Who is that? Because when watchdog committee was set up, I don't know if it was by Hubbard or whoever, there was no names attached. It was WDCE, WDCS, WDCA. They had letters attached, but no names, right? But they were messengers in CMO International handling different areas. And so I know this for a fact, the mission holders were like, well, who are these people that are giving us all these orders? We want to know who they are. Hubbard's not around. And normally he would be the person that we would go to, but who are these people? And I know that was one of the things they were upset about. Go ahead, Janice.
Yeah, the Watchdog Committee was set up by Hubbard, and it was messengers who had been on duty, and he broke it up into sectors where it was like Sea Org, Scientology, Mission Network, S as in special unit, and then it would later change to gold. So it was broken down that way rather than by the divisions. And Hubbard had wanted to keep confidential as to who those people were to try and prevent backlash or people coming after him or whatever. And so the very first photograph of the Watchdog Committee, because even management at Flag was like, who the hell is Watchdog Committee? So to handle that question, a photograph was sent to the Flag Management Bureau of the Watchdog Committee, all standing there with paper bags on their head.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
Now,
well, that's what the mission holders were upset about, because they were getting orders directly from Watchdog Committee, bypassing Roger Barnes, who they all respected and trusted.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, that would have been Annie Taskett.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what I was going to say is that I'm not sure. I think there were 2 mission holder conferences in Clearwater, and then there was the one in San Francisco that happened later, and that's when it got real heavy with the finance police. But the first one, I'm not sure if Bill Franks was there as the ED-int. I think he was there answering, and he also was kind of feeding the line where they asked about, well, who is this Watchdog Committee and all that? And he goes, yeah, I don't really know, and this and that, and or I don't know how much I can tell you. Here's Bill Franks over here on the right, Janice in the middle, and then the other gentleman on the left is Kerry Gleason, who was in charge of the International Management Organization at the time. But I just wanted to put a face there. That was Bill Franks. And I recall that was that, because then this mission holder conference, whatever, got the report of it got sent up to International Management, to WDC, and they're all like, what's going on, right? So I think they sent John Nelson, who was at that time had become the COCMO and was the Watchdog Committee chairman, and David Mayo, right? Wasn't David Mayo sent as well? And that's where the money and all that happened. Am I missing something, Mr. Sandy?
I wasn't involved that much, because remember, I was catching gophers on the golf course because I was so disaffected.
Were you and Roger at these mission holder conferences?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, then this is the way I heard it.
Yeah. Okay. Roger may have been at the one in Clearwater. I know he was not at the one in San Francisco.
Okay. So anyway, they were so upset after the first one, they thought, whatever, WDC or whatever, Miscavige, whoever, I think Miscavige was involved in the decision at the time. He wasn't the COCMO, John Nelson was, but he was Miscavige's puppet, which we've covered in other videos, right?
Miscavige was special project ops working directly under Pat and reporting directly to Hubbard with all his lies.
Right. So they held another one a couple of weeks later and called all these mission holders in again. And this one was recorded, like they did tape recordings of the thing, right? And at that one was Bill Franks on the right there, but also David Mayo, who was the senior case supervisor international, was sent from, Gilman Hot Springs, where he was, and he was sent there. And then also John Nelson, who's the gentleman there on the right with the beard, sitting next to Steve Marlowe. John Nelson was the Watchdog Committee chairman at the time and the commanding officer of CMO International. So the 3 of them were sent to talk to and handle these mission holders and put a face on this stuff, right? And so it was all recorded, right? And I don't know what happened exactly on the recording, but it was a big flap, because by the time they, the mission holders started asking questions and they wanted to flow power towards David Mayo, like you were saying, Sandy and Janice, that didn't they all put a bunch of money in a box and give David Mayo the cash, to take back, because they were flowing power to David Mayo and all this sort of stuff, right? And so this happened, and somebody who was with Nelson or whatever, they were going to come and they were going to take the tape recording and take it. And I think it was Dean Stokes. He went up there with a knife. He pulled his knife out and said, nobody's taking these tapes. We're keeping this tape, because they wanted the information, right? So this was considered very mutinous by WDC and Miscavige and all that sort of thing and all that. So they all came back again to Gilman Hot Springs, right? And that's when the 3rd mission holder conference was held in San Francisco. And you said, Roger,
I didn't really know of that second one because I wasn't involved.
Yeah. Well, then the 3rd one, were you there, Sandy? You said Roger was there. Okay. Right. Well, the 3rd one, this is where they sent Steve Marlowe, this gentleman here, not John Nelson this time. They sent Steve Marlowe. They sent Norman Starkey. They sent Wendell Reynolds, because at that point, Miscavige had set up the International Finance Police because they were going to teach these mission holders a lesson. Now, there was a gap of time. I forgot, I left one important fact out. There was a gap of time between the second one and the third one in San Francisco. All of a sudden, Hubbard was on the lines, and they were sending reports up to Hubbard about these mutinous mission holders and what they were doing and what they were saying. And then Hubbard, in his paranoia, was coming down and saying, like, you know, these people are enemies and we need to, you know, handle them and get rid of them or whatever it was. But one of the key things that Hubbard was really pushing at the time was that their external influences to management. In other words, these were people outside trying to tell, you know, hey, Bill Franks and John Nelson and all these people, you know, what to do. And they were externally influencing what they were supposed to do when they should be doing what Hubbard wanted them to do and what Miscavige wanted them to do, right? So Hubbard started this whole thing where he started talking about, you know, we got to find all the external influences on organizations, who's in there. We've got plants, we've got spies. It was very paranoia, and that became the focus of David Miscavige, Special Project Ops, Steve Marlowe, who was in Religious Technology Center at the time. And that's when they decided these mission holders with this de-dinging thing they're doing, they're squirrels. They sent that up to Hubbard as well. And then they mentioned the money that was being sent, given to Mayo and reporting up David Mayo. And he gets removed as senior CS int. There's a lot more to this story. But basically, they set up with these people that were sent there. John Nelson got removed. David Mayo got removed, Bill Franks got removed, and Kerry Gleason was made the executive director international. And there was just like, we can't have this mutiny from the mission holders, and we're going to show them who's boss. Okay, so that's when they did this, set up the finance police, and they went to San Francisco and had this mission holder conference, and they basically declared just right on the go before they even walked in. Kingsley Wimbush or Dean Stokes, I forget which one it was, got a declare handed to him. You're declared a suppressed person, and wasn't allowed to go in there. And then another one, they took the person's declare and they took a Sea Org dirk, which is like a bayonet, and they pinned it to the wall of this hotel in San Francisco. Kingsley Wimbush or Dean Stokes, I can't remember which one. They're declared there in front of all the mission holders there to scare them, to show them that they mean business. And then Wendell Reynolds talked, and Steve Marlowe talked about Religious Technology Center and how they were going to be policing the trademarks. And if you guys don't follow the trademarks, we can rip off, you know, come and shut down your mission and take it away from you, because you've got to, you know, this is all news to these people, right? But they were basically scaring the crap out of them. And that's when the International Finance Police were said, we're going to come into your missions and we're going to audit them, and we're going to take whatever money you've been keeping from Hubbard. So anyway, go ahead, Janice.
Yeah, and they came in full uniform.
Miscavige was there too.
Miscavige said they had their Sea Org officer hats on, full officer uniforms, you know, all the brass and everything, just, you know, to give them the ethics presence they required to handle these mission holders.
Yeah, and there's a photograph of Miscavige pointing his finger at Dean Stokes, I think it is, when he's declaring him to make, and he looks like he's a tough guy, declaring him in his full Sea Org uniform and all that. And then once that mission holder thing happened, that third conference, all hell broke loose. You know, that's when this committee of evidence was drawn up, and then all hell broke loose, where the finance police went into the different missions and started taking their money, and different mission holders were declared suppressive people, and it just destroyed the mission network, the main feeder line. These people were basically destroyed. That's it in a nutshell. There's a lot more detail to it, but I wanted to get back to the committee of evidence that then happened.
And that was the peak of the power, because after that, their statistics of the mission network just took a nosedive for years, and just kept nosediving as the finance police went in there and just continued to destroy the places. You know, it was terrible.
Yeah. So they got rid of all the powerful mission holders.
Yes.
They took their missions away from them.
Yeah, and many people left Scientology at that time.
There was a mass exodus from 1982. I heard that in just in LA alone, 2,000 people left Scientology.
Right.
Right. And most of them went to the Advanced Ability Center, which we'll cover.
That's
in another,
right.
We'll cover in another show.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a committee of evidence, which is a Scientology justice action, was drawn up because they had to deal, Miscavige and Marlowe and all them, they had to, basically deal with these executives and people who were in the Scientology management who were, quote unquote, listening to these external influences and these people outside, right? And that they needed to basically be gotten rid of, right? The committee of evidence, just so people know, and Janice will agree, and so will Sandy, it's really a kangaroo court. You're guilty as soon as that issue comes out. I mean, there is no proving your innocence, really. You're going to get in trouble, and you're going to, it's over at that point. But let me go ahead. I'm going to share this here. This is a copy, a closer look. Let me get here. I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm sorry about the photograph quality or whatever, but this is the committee of evidence that was drawn up that I mentioned before. Hold on. I'm going to get this here. I'm going to roll down. Hold on. I know. I'm sorry. All right. Anyway, committee of evidence. And like I said, it was dated the 9th of October, 1982. And it's kind of hard to see the people that are named there, but I've got it here and I'm just going to go ahead and read them off. These were all the people that were brought before committee of evidence, all right, by the Religious Technology Center. And it was ethics conditions order number 1. Okay. And the people were Jay Horowitz and John Horowitz. And they were basically in charge of John Horowitz was L. Ron Hubbard's son-in-law. He had been married to Diana Hubbard, but basically they were running the Flag Executive Briefing Course. They were training executives internationally. Pat Hunter, who was in the LRH-Com network, Chris Stevens, Mo Samuels, Julie Gillespie, who later became Julie Mayo, Kerry Gleason, who was the commanding officer of the International Management Org, but then was made the Executive Director International, Angelique Zimmerman, who I don't know who that is, David Mayo, who was the Senior CS International, John Nelson, who had been the COCMO at International and the Watchdog Committee Chairman, Peter Warren, who had been the Division 6 Executive International, Beth Sullivan, who also was in the LRH Communication Network, Janice Mead, I don't remember her. Alan Buchanan was the Deputy ED Executive Director and basically was Kerry Gleason's right-hand man. Emil Gilbert, who was the CO, Commanding Officer of Canada, or he must have been brought up to Exec Strata, and somebody named Peggy DeRosman, I don't remember her. And then later, Sandy, your husband Roger was added to the committee as well, correct?
Correct. And so was John Axel, because by that point, John Axel was the WDC person in charge of SMI.
Was that when LRH sent down the order to spit in John Axel's face?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which Miscavige was happy to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But, anytime LRH had said something like that, as a messenger, you wouldn't do that. You just felt was, okay, that's just a saying or something he's saying because he's mad about something. But you don't go and spit in someone's face.
Right.
Anyway, let me show quickly. These are pictures. These are the interested parties, they're called in the committee of evidence, which really means the defendants, right? And then, like I said, on the left there is Kerry Gleason and Bill Franks. Bill Franks was removed and handled in another justice action, and I think he basically blew, and they wanted to get rid of him. That's a whole nother story. But Kerry Gleason on the left was the Executive Director International. That's David Mayo, and at the time, he was not married to Julie Gillespie. They later got married after they left Scientology. And so that's David Mayo and Julie Gillespie. That is John Nelson there with the beard, like I mentioned. Steve Marlowe on the left was the actual person who wrote the issue and was what they call the convening authority as a executive for Religious Technology Center. And then this is a photograph of John Horowitz there when he got married to Diana Hubbard, who's right there in the center. And then off to the right over there, standing tall, is Alan Buchanan, who was Kerry Gleason's deputy, and L. Ron Hubbard and Mary Sue are on the left there in this photo. And then Maureen Samuels is right there in the center. She was, I think she was, why was she put on there?
She was in management, but I don't know what her job was.
I don't know. Anyway, again, so a lot of these didn't make sense. There's Roger Barnes, who was Sandy's husband at the time. And I mentioned there's Sandy and Roger there. right? Okay, and then on the actual committee, okay, the way Scientology Justice works, there's usually a chairman, a secretary, and 2 members to decide. They basically act as the jury, the investigators, and the jury. Well, in this one, there was 5 members, a chairman, and a secretary, and these are the people that are on the issue and that were on this, okay? The chairman was Ray Midoff, who took over as Senior CS International at the time. The secretary was Shelley Miscavige. You see her there on the right. And these were members of the committee. Jesse Prince was a member of the committee, meaning he was one of the jury members. On the right is Laura Marlowe, who was Steve Marlowe's wife, and she was a member. She used to work for Miscavige as his assistant before Shelley Miscavige took that position. And then also members of the committee. On the left there, that's a young Mark Fisher. That's me. That's what I looked like at the time. And on the right is Matt Pesh, who was the head of security at the Gilman Hot Springs base, and he was a member. So this was it. Don't have a photograph. There was one more member, which was Gelda Midoff, who was Ray Midoff's wife, and she also was a member, but I don't have a photograph of her. So we were basically given 3 days. It actually took longer than that to investigate and find the high crimes and crimes of these people and basically deal with them. So, and then like you said, John Axel and Roger Barnes were added to this committee. Anyway, like I mentioned, about external influences, that became their hobby horse. This was the first paragraph in the actual committee of evidence issue. It says, evidence has now been gathered through intensive investigation, showing that these interested parties have been acting in cahoots with outside influences in an effort to manipulate church resources, lines, and terminals to forward their own vested interests. Characterized by voiced disaffection and criticism of church direction and ecclesiastical seniors and senior bodies, these interested parties have been found to be those taking the very management actions of which they complain. Okay. I forgot to mention one other thing too. False reports had been sent up to L. Ron Hubbard about the statistics and the expansion of Scientology to the point where he was upset about it. And Kerry Gleason and Alan Buchanan and them, they got to the point where they thought, what are you doing? We're expanding. This is crazy. And so they decided that Hubbard must be getting false reports and that they were going to go and find him to give him the correct reports. So they were going to hire their own private investigators and actually locate L. Ron Hubbard to give him the reports. Oh, this was considered really, really treasonous. Okay, I forgot to mention that. That's one of the reasons why they were included on this committee of evidence and needed to be removed, because you do not go and find L. Ron Hubbard. That's Pat Broker, Annie Broker, and David Miscavige, communication line. So anyway, they got included in that. And of course, Janice David Mayo, one of the things he was removed from was because he had been security checking, was it David Miscavige? Pat Broker?
Pat Broker, and Jesse Prince was sec checking David Miscavige.
Right, and those reports were sent up to L. Ron Hubbard via Pat Broker, and they never made it to Hubbard. Okay, right. And they would have found out Hubbard would have found out the out ethics that those two guys were involved in, including spending L. Ron Hubbard's money, dealing with prostitutes, gambling in Las Vegas, things like that. They never made it to Hubbard, and only the false reports made. So this was a huge cover-up on their part, and they basically were taking out all of the people that were senior that actually were expanding Scientology and in this committee of evidence, right? Let me just briefly, I've been talking too long. Sandy, why don't you tell from your perspective what happened with Roger? Did he get brought up to the international base? Is that what happened? He must have been brought up to Gilman Hot Springs.
Right. So we were in Los Angeles. I was sent to Flag to do training.
Clearwater.
Yes, Clearwater. And that was where the International Police headquarters was. And since I was a finance person, they brought me there. I was on course. I didn't know anything really. I didn't really know what was going on. And I left our 3-year-old son with Roger. And then Roger got yanked and pulled to INT. Of course, I didn't know where that was. No one knew where that was. And he left our son with friends, people who worked at SMI. And I was flabbergasted and extremely upset. And I started sending telexes. You know, I said, send my son to Flag now, send him to Clearwater. I'm authorizing the funds to do that. That's a long story, but about a week later, they finally did send him to Flag. And meanwhile, at INT, they lined up all these people that you just named, all the people that were being comeved, and and David Miscavige went down the line. He spit in John Axel's face. He either slapped or punched Roger. And I don't know what he did to anyone else. Those are the two that I found out about from Roger later. And then Roger was locked up in a room with an armed guard. And while the committee of evidence was going on. And I didn't know any of this at the time, of course. I was at Flag doing training. I got my son there, and I think I took the next day off to just kind of be with my son and de-stimulate him, because he'd been left parentless, in Los Angeles. And then that night, I got called into the INT Finance Police office. There was a new guy. I think his name was Don Larson.
Yeah,
he was in the
Finance Police, MAA, Master at Arms. Yeah.
Okay, he sat me down. I could see Wendell in the next office over, listening to the whole conversation. He sat me down, and he read me my committee of evidence, which included embezzling funds and a few other things that were absurd. And he said, Roger is going to be declared and expelled. Are you going to go with him, or are you going to stay? And at that point, we had been married 9 years, and we had a 3-year-old. But our marriage was a little rocky for other reasons that I don't need to go into right now. So I said, well, I need to think about it. And he said, that's the wrong answer. You're not a dedicated Sea Org member. You're out now. I said, what do you mean? He says, you're out. Get out. You're out of the Sea Org. Just get out. And I looked into Wendell's office to see. I mean, I had worked for Wendell previous to this in the Guardian office for 8 years. Right. I was very close to Wendell. And I looked to see what his reaction was, and he just was sitting at his desk doing nothing, and I couldn't believe it. So I walked outside. Excuse me, it was 10:30 at night in Clearwater. And I was stunned. I was just, my head was reeling. Oh, I said to the guy, to Don Larson, I said, well, where will I go? And he said, I don't care. Get a hotel room. I said, how am I going to pay? How am I going to pay for that? He said, I don't care. Use a credit card. I said, you must be new. I don't have a bank account, let alone a credit card. He said, not my problem. You're out. So I didn't realize my tickle was going to be this bad in this interview. I am getting over a cold. So I was outside the Clearwater building, and I thought, this is crazy. I can go back in and ask for ComEv. And then I realized that means I'm going to go to the RPF. And I thought, okay, I've seen crazy times before. Things will calm down eventually. I'll leave. and I'll come back when it gets sane again. So I got on the bus that went out to the Quality Inn where the nursery was, picked up my baby, and went and slept on the floor of someone else's room that night in the Quality Inn. Meanwhile, I hobnobbed with my brother, and we tried to figure out where we could get money together, or where I could get money from to fly my son and I back to California, because that's where I was from, and that's where my family was. So we finally came up with a good idea for that. We did not want to call my parents because that would be bad PR for Scientology.
Right.
And meanwhile, during this whole time, I mean, it was so surreal because I got on this bus and I looked around and none of these people knew that I was now an outsider. You know, it was a very strange feeling. But all the while in the back of my mind, I was feeling a little bit excited because like somebody had just opened the door and said, you can leave.
Right.
And I had really secretly always wanted to leave. So I flew to LA with my son, and I sent a letter to it was picked up by the woman who sent the money, bought our airline tickets.
She was a public person, wasn't she?
Well, she had been in the Flag GO briefly for about 2 years, and she really liked me a lot. And she decided she was going to be my son's godmother, even though we never had a ceremony or anything. But she took me, you know, just glommed onto me, and she took care of me when I left the Sea Org. She brought me to her house where she lived with her 2 children. She was a single mother. She gave me $250 in cash and then proceeded to pay for everything. She said, that's just for fun, for whatever you want to spend it on. So I spent a month de-stimulating. I went to the beach. I went to a movie, a couple of movies with my son. I learned how to be a mother because I had never had to take care of my own child before. And I cooked the meals for the family. She bought all the groceries, but I cooked the meals.
And where was this again? Where I missed.
She lived in Culver City.
Okay.
Meanwhile, I wrote a letter to Roger. I told him where I was and what I was doing. I got a letter back from him. It was the 22nd of October, 82, that I was kicked out. And so I got a letter back from him. He told me that he was at INT and he couldn't leave, but he would leave and he would meet me at my father's house for Thanksgiving, which, as anyone who's not in the U.S. may or may not know, that's near the end of November. So a month. I had a month to kind of collect myself. So then I don't even remember how I got to my father's house. He lived in San Jose, which is, you know, probably 500 or 600 miles away from Los Angeles. And I went to my dad's house. Thanksgiving came and went. And my father says, well, where's Roger? And I said, I don't know, because honestly, I did not know where he was. So he tricked the armed guard into leaving the door unlocked, and he escaped. And he hitchhiked in the cold and rain to San Jose from Hemet, which was where, and he got there a few days after Thanksgiving, and then we were still dedicated Scientologists, so we did not want to tell my father what had happened. We didn't want to you know, say anything that would be negative about Scientology. So it was very difficult. We stayed with my father for 3 months. He kept saying, well, you need to go get a job. You know, he did not want us there. And, you know, in his defense, you know, many years later, when he saw a talk that I did where I talked about my whole experience, he said, I never should have signed the permission slip for you to go. And he felt really guilty for, you know, the whole thing. And I said, you know, Dad, for many years, I was angry with you because the reason I wanted to go join the Sea Org was because I had such a terrible relationship with him. And I said, but, you know, honestly, I have forgiven you long time since, because, you know, it's great cocktail party conversation. You know, I get to tell people, yeah, I was on the boat with L. Ron Hubbard, and I was a Scientologist, and people are like, oh, tell me more, tell me what happened, you know. Anyway, so, but at the time it was extremely difficult living with my father. Roger didn't know what to do. He kept saying, well, I don't know what to do if I can't clear the planet. And I just went and started looking in the paper for jobs. And I found a job paying $850 a month, which seemed like a lot of money. But we had nothing. We had 2 suitcases with clothes. We had about $250, and we had a 3-year-old. And that's all we had. We had no furniture. We had no silverware. We had no plates. We had nothing. And learning to live on our own with no assistance was very difficult. You know, we got an apartment that was $400 a month, and it was a couple of blocks away from a grocery store. So we would walk to the grocery store, fill up the cart with groceries, and walk the cart back to our apartment, and then walk the cart back to the empty cart back to the store. And I'm trying to figure out, what do I buy at the grocery store? I mean, all my meals had always been cooked for me. I didn't know what to do. So, you know, I started doing this thing where I would make a menu for the week, and based on that, I would make a grocery list for the week, and then go to the grocery store, because we could only go once a week because we had to walk, you know, we didn't have a car. So, I mean, you know, it was very, very tough. Roger finally got a job as a headhunter in Silicon Valley. I had this job.
Explain what a headhunter. I know what it is, but
okay, a headhunter is somebody who, well, where we were in Silicon Valley, and this is 1983. So you know, full on tech is happening, and some company would call the company Roger worked for and say, I need a quality control engineer. And Roger would go and find quality control engineers at other companies and try to rip them off and place them in this other company. And when he was successful, he would get a commission. So we never knew how much money he was going to make. It was up and down and up and down and up and down. We put our son in preschool.
Right, Janice? We've been there.
Yep. We did that too when we left.
Yeah, we put our son in a preschool, and we would the 3 of us would run to the bus stop first thing in the morning. We would get on the bus, take it to the preschool. One of us would get off the bus with our son and deposit him and catch the next bus into downtown San Jose. And then on the way home, it was reversed. You know, one would stop and pick him up. And so we were busing. Well, in fact, that's how I found my second job. There was a nice lady on the bus who thought, well, everyone thought we were adorable, because we would be running down the street to the bus stop with this little 3-year-old kid, you know, and it was like, oh, they're so cute, you know. And yeah, anyway.
Let me ask you a question. What did Roger ever say? Why he was guilty, or why they thought he was guilty? You know, was it just because he was over the mission network and these mission holders?
Yeah, and he was allowing all of this out tech to go on. He was
de-dinging.
de-dinging and pushing power to power, you know, which.
So he obviously was a squirrel and you know, suppressive person allowing this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing to me. I mean, obviously, like I said, if you're in a community of evidence as an interested party, they're going to find something to make you guilty. It's like the whole saying of like, show me the man and I'll find the crime, you know? I mean, that's basically how it went.
That's how most committee of evidences went.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And in this time period, it was a real witch hunt. It was, you know, it was similar, but I think even more serious than the rock slam, list one rock slam period when people were just sent to the rehabilitation project force. They weren't kicked out, declared. I mean, Hubbard even went so far as he came up with excommunication, and his definition of excommunication was you weren't just declared for this lifetime a suppressive person, you were declared for lifetimes, like forever, right? And if you were a true believer of Scientology, that was really serious because you thought, well, okay, I'll just start over next lifetime. No. You know, if you got excommunicated, that was even worse. And that all came up at the same time when all this was going on. Yeah. It was crazy town, crazy town.
Right.
I just wanted to mention, for me, I just briefly tell my story. Okay, I was a member of the committee, right? But I didn't last more than like 2 weeks. Because it didn't get done in 3 days. It took weeks to get this thing done. And I was completely in disagreement with what was being done. Okay. I literally was sitting there listening to this stuff and I'm going like, I can't believe they're going to committee, you know, Kerry Gleason and all these people are being charged with crimes. I had been in Clearwater during that whole boom period working for Kerry Gleason. I had been in charge of training all the evaluators, the management evaluators, you know, so that they could get, you know, make the organizations expand. I saw with my own eyes the expansion. I'm going like, this is crazy that they're wiping these people out. It's crazy, right? So I wasn't only on for like about 2 weeks. I was getting auditing at the time. And it was coming up in my auditing sessions that I disagreed with what was going on because they say, well, you know, what's wrong? Why are you upset? And I honestly tell my counselor what was going on. And then the next thing you know, I'm in session with Jesse Prince, who worked in Religious Technology Center as the cramming officer, but basically he was just he did sec checking and things like that. So, and he was a member of the committee too. So, hey, what are your crimes? You know, basically trying to find out what out ethics do you have going on? And I just said, I don't agree with what's going on and this and that. And, you know, that came up with something that I felt I did that was wrong. So I was removed literally after like about 2 weeks. I was taken off and doing deck work out by the on the grounds at the Gilman Hot Springs. And then shortly thereafter, I was sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force in Los Angeles. So I never, ever participated or saw the end of that committee of evidence. I have no idea what they found. I don't know what happened to the people or anything. All I know is I got sent a one-way ticket to Los Angeles to be in the Rehabilitation Project Force. And I was 24 years old at the time. And I wasn't married at the time. I had no connection. And I seriously considered I need to get out of here. And I thought about blowing and getting out. And it wasn't until about, 3 or 4 days of being in there that I started to get back into the groove of what was going on. I got assigned somebody to take care of as what they call a twin in the RPF. And I got it with the program. And then, of course, I started justifying, saying, well, you know what? There must have been something wrong with me. There must have been something wrong with me that I was going on, that I thought that this was not right. You know what I mean? And I all thought when my disaffection, when I was on the committee, was saying like, oh, L. Ron Hubbard must be getting false reports. He's got to be getting false reports because this is crap. I mean, why would he do this? Anyway, so that's what happened with me. I ended up in the Rehabilitation Project Force, and I never saw what was going on.
Well, now, with that, you guys all going out and getting in trouble, I was already in trouble and coming back in. And I'd been declared and left chasing gophers. And then Paul and I were fed up with just no one would handle us. So that's where we walked up and said, give us a writing form. We want to leave. And Steve Marlowe and DM got onto it and assigned us as expediters back in the Commodore's Messenger org. And then I became the assistant for Mike Rinder, who was the chief officer at that time. And everyone was going, what's wrong with the Mission Network? It's, you know, the stats keep going down and just crashing down. And no matter what anybody did, they continued to crash. So I was sent out on an observation mission to the Mission Network. And I saw the destruction that the finance police had done.
Eventually, I was going to say, but then eventually, with all the other stuff going on in Scientology and this and that, it just all fell apart. Miscavige, you know, taking control of RTC and all the other stuff we've talked about. It just, you know, Hubbard dying and all that. But this was a real major. This committee of evidence and this whole mission holder thing was a major blow to Scientology. Oh, whether or not you believe in Scientology or not, the people that were in who were watching this is what happened. We're just trying to tell the story of what went on. And some people say, good, you know, it blew it up and all that, and you guys, you know, got out. But it was pretty heavy at the time, that's for sure. I know.
Yeah. Well, you got to realize at that time we were all brainwashed and we were into it. And this was a major accomplishment, you know, a major destruction and then accomplishment later to rebuild something that had been totally destroyed.
Yeah. And Sandy, we had the same viewpoint as Roger. Like, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to clear the planet. I mean, what are we supposed to do? You know what I mean? I remember thinking nothing interests me. No job interests me. You know what I mean?
Well, I was fortunate in that I had worked in finance and I had been taught by Marty Greenberg how to do basic bookkeeping. Mm-hmm. And for me, you know, I was only out for maybe 4 months before I was like, woohoo, I am so done. I was like, I was done with Scientology. Yeah. Certainly I was done with the Sea Org, for sure. Right. It took many years of peeling the onion to divest myself of all the layers and layers of disinformation and brainwashing. And I didn't have any help with it. I had to do it myself. And learning to talk to people who were not Scientologists was one of the toughest things. Yeah. At my job, I would start to say something and I'd have to stop and search for a word that was in English, not in Scientology's. Have you guys talked about that?
Oh, no, we haven't talked about that. But
oh my God. You know, how do you say ARC break? You know, how do you say 2D? How do you say, I mean, all the Scientology words. And you know, they must have thought I was really strange when I talked because I would pause all the time to find a word.
Translate.
That, you know, yeah.
Well, it's Terry and I used
speaking a foreign language.
Yeah. Like well, Terry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, Terry and I were the same way in the mortgage business. We'd have a conversation and people were like, what? What are you saying? And we'd go, oh, that's Australian. Just so that they wouldn't question it, you know, any further. Because we weren't going to tell people we'd been in Scientology and we still believed in it or anything like that.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead.
My first babysitting job, when I got out to make money, I was militant. I would.
Oh yeah.
I was a militant babysitter, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me go ahead and show what happened to the people that were on this committee of evidence. On the left, Kerry Gleason. He and Jill left shortly thereafter, right? They were never on any other position, and they left Scientology. Bill Franks also. Bill Franks was left and was declared suppressive person, and eventually ended up testifying against Scientology. And he had been the executive director international. And unfortunately, both Kerry and Bill are no longer with us. But that was the end for them as far as Scientology goes. And they were long-term Sea Organization executives. David Mayo and Julie.
Let me just say something about Kerry, because after he left, he went to Sweden. He didn't speak a word of Swedish, but he had a little 3-year-old daughter and a wife. And he didn't know what to do either. He'd been in since he was 19 years old. And then he went to a bank and was able to start teaching them administrative work. And he built a whole major business and network worth millions of dollars teaching people how to handle work.
Right. Okay. And then, like I said, David Mayo and Julie Gillespie, they were kicked out, declared suppressive people, and then eventually set up the Advanced Ability Center, which we will talk about in our next video. But he was basically major enemy and got heavy fair game attacks by Scientology, like to ruin him and Julie's lives. So he would no longer, and he had been the person who saved L. Ron Hubbard when he was auditing him when he was on death's doorstep in the late 70s. And he was just basically kicked out and gone. John Nelson, same thing, kicked out at that time. I guess he was declared a suppressive person, but he left Scientology. He was gone at that point. Steve Marlowe on the left, he was in for many years. He got demoted from Religious Technology Center and then was working in audio, but he's no longer in the Sea Organization or in Scientology, and he's outside. John Horowitz is no longer in Scientology, right, Janice? He's in the Sea Org, right? He's gone.
That's right. He's gone. Yep.
Now,
he's still alive, but he's gone.
Yeah. Now, John survived in terms of he was not declared and kicked out of Scientology, which you can understand because his daughter was L. Ron Hubbard's granddaughter, right, Janice?
Yes, but John was declared, and he was declared on the base and kept at the base before I was declared and kept at the base. We were the only two people that had happened to. But yeah, Hubbard specifically said declare him and have him do his A to E at the base because of Rowan. Right.
And Alan Buchanan was kicked out and declared a suppressive person, and he's no longer alive. Mo Samuel, I think she left then too, didn't she, Janice? Did she leave at that time period?
Yes.
She's still alive and doing well. Roger, as Sandy mentioned, was kicked out and gone.
By the way, Roger ended up marrying that woman who saved me when I left.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they're still together.
And they're happily married to this day. Roger and I have been in good communication all these years.
That's great. And then as far as the committee members go, Ray Midoff is somewhere still in Scientology. You know, who knows? Shelley Miscavige is missing and has been being looked for years, but she's basically been made persona non grata up at the spiritual technology base somewhere. But Ray Midoff hasn't been seen in ages, right? Jesse Prince is no longer. He left Scientology and the Sea Organization, and he testified against Scientology and has written a book. He's no longer there. Laura Marlowe is out of Scientology. They're not critics, but they're gone. They're no longer there. Of course, I left as well, and Matt Pash, he's gone. He had left with Amy Scobie years later, the Sea Organization, and that's it. So the only person left is Ray Midoff and his wife Gelda. The only two that are still in. And so you can see what happened. But basically, it was a major step, not first, but it was a major step that Miscavige used to take out people. And, the Scientology still left with him to this day. And that's what happened. Okay. Anyway, that's the end of the story on this. I wanted to thank Sandy for being here. Before I let everybody go, please subscribe to our channel. Okay, we'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and rock slam that like button. If you have any questions or comments, please ask in the comment section. We answer them all, so please do write in there. And then if you'd like to make a donation to our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the description. Just click on that. You can do that. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that you can become a member of our channel. You hit the join button and you can become a peeling supporter. It's just $3.99 a month if you want to support us that way. And you get different benefits and things like that. And you just click on the join button. We've got a peeling supporter. We've got a peeling professional, and the benefits are listed out there, and that's $9.99 a month. There's no contract. You can cancel at any time. And then our peeling masters, they get an autographed copy of Janice's book, and we send that to you. And we have different benefits there too, and that's $19.99 a month. Again, you can cancel at any time. But if you'd like to become a member of our channel and support us that way, we would greatly appreciate it. And just wanted to mention that. Is there anything else anybody would like to say before we end off, Janice?
No, thank you, Sandy. It was fun.
Yeah, we'll go into the next phase.
Sorry about the coughing and...
No, it was the wine delivery. It was the wine delivery that really blew things up.
That's what I was going to say, Mark. Yeah, it was wine delivery.
She's just getting up and she's going, I've got to go.
Well,
my
they
wife
won't.
delivered.
If you don't sign for it, they won't leave it. You know.
Yeah,
Well,
but I
understand.
must say, Sandy does make the best margaritas.
Oh, okay. All right, everybody. Until next time. Bye-bye. We'll see you later. Stay
Bye.
on,
Okay.
Sandy. Bye-bye.
Bye.